Hello, and welcome to another episode of Police Off the Cuff After Hours. My name is Mark DeMeo. I'm your host, my co-host, my partner in all things law enforcement, Bill Cannon. What's up, Bill?
Looking forward to tonight's show. It's a really exciting show and an important show because we have these two missing children.
Why don't we introduce our guest? It's our pleasure. He's gone out of his way for us without even really knowing us. That shows you what a true gentleman he is. He's a retired NYPD detective. He's a 9/11 first responder. He also has a podcast of his own, which he has a lot of followers, and it's a huge hit. He's here with us tonight. His name is Ron Liccardi, better known as Duty Ron.
Yep. Thank you, Mark.
The podcast is on the Duty Ron.
Yes.
And
yes.
I know we haven't met officially, but I think I like you already because I was checking out your Instagram and I noticed that you were wearing a Mets jersey.
Oh yeah, diehard Mets fan. My father.
Me too.
My father did it to me early on in my childhood, and my kids, who are like 27 and 24, they're like, "Dad, why do we got to be Mets fans?" Welcome to my world, right?
Yeah.
Same exact thing with me. I raised my kids Mets fans. My son's 24. My daughter's 21, and they're like, why? Why did you do this to us? Yeah, but listen, things are looking up right now. We have the new owner, Cohen, and just got Lindor and Caraco, and there's more big acquisitions on the way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I know, me too. We have another guest, and he's retired NYPD also from computer crimes, and he's having trouble getting on, logging on right now.
So, here he is. He's in Silicon Valley, and he's a computer crime expert, and he's having problems getting on. It's unbelievable.
How does that work?
That's always the way it is. Every time we have somebody that has like an engineer, their own engineer, things always go wrong. Somehow Bill manages to put it together all by himself up there in the palatial estates. Hey, while we wait for Mike to come on, and before we start talking about this case that we asked you to come in and share with us, are you also a Jets fan too?
No, I'm a Giants fan. That's the weirdness of the whole thing, right? How did that happen? I'm a Giants fan. So. Okay,
because I was just at I had this when the Jets lost to the Rams, I said, man, something's not smelling right. And then today, the Jaguars got Nick Saban as their coach, who's coming in with the first round draft pick of the quarterback now, Trayvon. I forget what his name is. But anyway.
I heard it on the way.
Yeah, so it kind of sort of worked out well for them, didn't it? Is that a coincidence?
Listen,
they've been talking for weeks.
Things are looking up for the Mets and the Jets. When was the last time you heard that?
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about baseball right now. Michael, there he goes. What's up?
All the way from Silicon Valley, Mike Fabozzi has showed up. My God, I thought you would have the best Wi-Fi on earth, but instead, you're fading in and out. Let's get right into
reintro him.
This is Mike Fabozzi. He's a retired NYPD detective. He's a computer crimes expert. He actually did NYPD had one of the first computer crime units in the nation, and Mike was one of its first detectives in that unit. And since that, he has an amazing career outside of the police department. He has a company called Net Thunder, and he's the co-founder and he's the chief operating officer. And Mike sort of wrote the book on computer crime. So we're going to ask him some questions relative to this case once we get going. He just disappeared again. So let's move on. Ron, why don't you introduce the case to the Police Off the Cuff fans?
Okay, so we started talking about this case just a couple of days ago. I had one of my 23,000 subscribers. They always send in, I have a website, so they send in suggestions for shows. So one of my really good fans sent me a message, you got to get on this. The two missing boys, they were reported missing on December 21st, a little bit before Christmas. So these two boys were reported missing by their adopted mother and father. The kids are 3 and 4 years old, and it's Orson West and Orrin West. So they're similar in name, Orson and Orrin, 3 years old and 4 years old. They reported the 21st, and it's caused it's a media frenzy because the kids went missing under very nefarious conditions. Like the stories don't match the thing, everything that the parents are talking about don't match. People haven't seen them in months. Neighbors have never seen them. So there's a big uproar over this, and rightfully so. These are two little toddlers that just vanished in the middle of the day, 4 o'clock actually, 4:15. So it's a huge case, and I was honored to have you and Irma on, and we talked about it. And it was a really it was a big hit. So I think Bill, you have this is the interview with the parents.
Yeah, I'm trying to just show so we our fans get an idea of the body language of the adoptive parents.
Yeah. So that's the father on the left, and he is the one who made actually the news story. He was the one who spoke most of the time, and his story is just not jiving with a lot of people, including the police commissioner and sheriff from Bakersfield and from California City in California. Now I don't know how far our guest is from there, but it's in the desert, so I don't know. Maybe he has a little better idea where it is.
Well, Mike disappeared again. But one of the things we're talking about is, for those that are new to this case, the police did a search warrant on the house. They dug in the backyard. So for you non-police people, to get a search warrant, you need what's called probable cause, which is the likelihood that a crime was committed. So it has to be signed by a judge. So they obviously convinced the judge that they needed a search warrant because there's some suspicious circumstances to the disappearance of these two kids. In addition, they dug in the backyard, and we, as not being part of this investigation or having the knowledge that the police have, there's a lot of things that they have undoubtedly done that we don't know about. Right. And one of the things about California City, California, they had no homicides in the past year. So they're not an experienced police department in regards to investigating homicides, but that doesn't mean they don't have some damn good investigators. I'm sure they do.
I got a little bit of intel from some of the viewers. I don't know if it's, how true it is, but they said it's a privately funded police department. Now, maybe in some of the more rural areas, they do that. I didn't verify it or check into it, but I know that they're a small police department because I looked on their website and there's not like a detective squad. There's not, there's just like a fingerprinting records division, and there's not a lot of resources. I saw the chief of the police department who's on this case on a horse. Obviously, he's got to use horseback to go in to do the searches. But it isn't what we're thinking it is police department wise. It's a smaller police department, and that's why they look to the state and the FBI to come in and help them out because they needed the help. So,
and Duty Ron, they seem to have a lot of help from civilians and what we would call amateur investigators. But sometimes amateur investigators, and especially people from the community with tips, can help out in an investigation that's this large, this vast. And any tips they can get, they appreciate.
Yeah.
Well, we have a comment by Palmer Violets, and aren't the parents in Florida? Why would the parents leave?
See, now, it was my understanding that the police, they were cooperating with the police, and I wouldn't think that they would authorize them to now leave California and shoot all the way over to the East Coast. So I don't know. That hasn't been confirmed. I haven't heard that. But again, they're not suspects. They're not being detained. So I don't think that there would be really anything that would stop them from traveling. But I would think that, Bill, you might be able to expand better on this. Is like, if they're in Florida, what's up with that?
I think they would be strongly encouraged not to leave the state of California.
Right.
If they don't have probable cause to arrest them, they can't stop them from leaving. But I think they would strongly suggest to them that they not leave. And, that also lays another layer of suspicion on them. If they leave California to go to Florida, like, why are they not hanging around to find their kids, to help find their kids,
Right.
Mike, are you on the air? You live or you frozen?
I hear me. Yeah.
Yeah, I
For
can
some
hear.
reason, my internet service. I pay a lot of money, the highest amount to monthly service for the highest speed, and it's still not fast enough.
That's the left coast for you. Mike, you know, one of the reasons we brought you in here is because you're obviously a computer forensic expert. And the police served a warrant on this home. And of course, one of the things they would be looking to take would be the home computer. Could you give us a little wisdom on that and how that works forensically and what they're going to be looking for?
Sure. So the first thing is that in many cases, you would want a search warrant. So the detective who's assigned the case, I guess in this case, a missing persons case, would get a search warrant for the computer and then also to do a forensics of the computer. Once they've gotten a judge to sign off on that, they have permission to take it, and then the computer will be imaged, and they call it a bit-by-bit image on a forensic computer. That's where the who in computer crimes will then work on that image to try to put it in. Now, the computer crime detective, all the data is in there, but they have to work with the investigator at the Homicide or Missing Persons Bureau to sort of help with the keyword search or time frame and time stamps. So it's very important for the computer forensics detectives to make sure that the time on the computer is actual true time, because it could throw off a story and lead an investigator down an incorrect path. And so the professionals that do it today will know the time clock on the computer and then start doing the forensic work.
Mike, could you tell if they tried to delete things on the computer and then in fact it'll still be preserved on the hard drive?
Yes. So if for example, if they did some searches or keyword searches like on Google, like how to get away with murder type thing, or some other searches, that's will be there. But also, what you're talking about is documents and keystrokes that were typed and then maybe deleted. Like they were going to do some kind of scheme or ransom. Maybe that would be in the computer. It would be very useful for the investigators.
And this is former NYPD detective Mike Fabozzi, also a John Jay College professor at one time. And he has a computer company now, a forensic computer company in Silicon Valley. But with all of that said, he has a bad Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you a question, because when I'm looking at the parents, they look kind of young to be adoptive parents. I could almost understand if they were foster parents, but though doesn't that, I don't even know like how a young couple like that would go and adopt and like that young. It just seems odd to me. Usually people who adopt are a little bit older. They can't have kids on their own, or you know what I'm saying?
You know, Mark, I actually looked at that too. When I first picked the case up, I said, they got 6 kids. They have 2 of their own, and then they have 4, I believe, adopted. The 2 that went missing, and then 2 additionals that were adopted. So yeah, I mean, that I scratched my head because they don't look like they're more than 30, 32, 35, 30 in that range, maybe even younger. But I don't know the adoption laws. I mean, when we were cops, I was just used to take kids to Spofford, right? I don't know what the
You see, to me, sometimes if you're in a situation where, that there is some blood there, that let's say those children's parents died, and that was a nephew or something like that, and they went to court and he was willing to adopt them. That's a situation where you might get them young. But the fact that they have 6 kids and they're that young too, that's a pretty that's a heavy burden on any family. Who's going to work? How are they surviving? Is it money grab? Sometimes these foster kids become a money grab too.
Yeah, and Mimi J2 in the chat, she's one of my moderators and Patreon and channel members. She says, "Does the biological mom have any say in who fosters them?" And I know that answer is no.
Because the children were removed.
They were removed because one of the boys, I believe the 4-year-old Orrin, had a fracture at like 6 months old in his leg, and she was a drug user. So there was probably more to the story. I don't know all the details because I didn't obviously have access to, the case. But this child was forcibly removed and put into foster care. And these were the fosters, and then they in turn adopted them. So
Okay.
I got to get a little better versed on it.
Yeah, I mean, why would someone that's a foster parents that are actually getting paid to raise these kids adopt them and then they stop getting paid? Why would they do that? Is that something? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there
If
is.
they're not motivated by money, that's one reason that they really love the children. I don't know this case very well, but one thing, when someone is adopted, they are in all fact and circumstances legally your child,
Right.
and you're responsible for them. So the specifics of actually a great thing for the.
do we know what the father does for a living?
Several people asked me, Bill, about that, and I didn't delve into that, but I'm sure some of the content creators on YouTube probably already have that figured out. I feel like there's a money element that comes into play here because the West family, that's the
Adoptive parents.
father's last name. His parents, I think, or someone in the West family put up $30K in reward money. And there was also reports that when they went to go buy that $200,000 home where they're living right now, that it was a problem with down payment or meeting a mortgage. And then all of a sudden they came back with a large lump sum of money. So people are speculating that possibly there could be something not right because somebody said he's not employed, working at, for IBM or something like that. So he's not a full-time employee anywhere. Where's he getting his money from? So that's questions that come up,
Absolutely. And Mike, another thing we wanted to talk about forensically, the cell phones. And we know a lot about cell phones doing investigations, the text messages, the calls going back and forth between the mother and the father, the GPS location where the person is when they say they're possibly somewhere else. That could be used to challenge them in interrogation. You want to speak upon that?
Oh, sure. So basically, if you're carrying a GPS computer in your pocket, now the area that this missing happened is sort of a rural area in California near the Mojave Desert.
Right.
It's quite a rural place. But all the information that's in the cell phone is going to be recovered by the forensics. I apologize if my service is going out. I don't know why the internet is so today, but it is. The phone, GPS, any searches, messages to anybody, also, it's a way to check.
You're cutting out, Mike.
It's going to actually have his footprints, his footsteps for the past few days. And that will really be good evidence for the investigators.
Hey, Duty Ron, Barbara Farrell asks, do you think there is child trafficking involved in this?
It's a component that is a possibility. It's one of the angles that perhaps could have, it's one of the possibilities that could have happened to these kids. We don't know. But yeah, that's a great question because a lot of people are talking about it. Apparently, the child trafficking game is strong down there because it's close to the border of Mexico. And there was talk about there was 2 young children down or just across the border a bit, recovered recently that were deceased. So 2 young children were, I guess, found in Mexico, and they're asking, they were asking me, why aren't the police here going and talking with the authorities of Mexico? That is a whole nother animal right there. It's difficult to get communication when you're talking about, and even if there was a suspect there to bring him back, the extradition is a whole process. So, Bill, you could probably speak more about that.
Well, dealing with another country's authorities, you're right. It's a whole other Pandora's box of problems there.
Right.
But that's why we have the FBI and we have units that regulate Homeland Security that regularly deal with people in foreign countries. You know, Duty Ron, we want to bring back, because a lot of our fans don't know. Let's go back to the 21st of December, where the two kids allegedly first disappeared.
Right. Yeah. So on the 21st, when this happened, the father was supposedly out in the backyard moving wood around because it was cold. He was trying to get some wood and bring it inside the house. Bill, you and I with Irma, we showed the interior of that home. There is, in fact, a working fireplace, at least as per the multiple listing service. We watched the video. It looked like there was a working fireplace in the house. But he said that there's tons of wood all around at the press conference. And we did the drone footage and aerial from Google Earth. It's a dry desert. I mean, there's some trees, but those trees are like, it looks like they've been there for a long time. And there's just not a whole bunch of, desert available. This looks like the video from the neighbor's house. So we saw him moving about the backyard at the time that he said that the kid went outside the gate, but there was no children there and there was no urgency. So to really make it short and sweet, there was no freaked out parent looking for his kid. He got into his car and took a 5-minute, 6-minute car ride and then came back and didn't search the adjacent properties. There's those open lots there. He didn't even search those. I mean, I don't know about you, Bill, if your kids were missing, I'd be like with floodlights out there, turning my headlights on a car. I'd be driving up on the sand looking for him. I'd be freaking out.
I would do more than a 6-minute search. That's for sure.
The foster mom never at any time left that house.
Right.
She didn't even come outside. My wife would be like, what the, hold on.
Yeah, they're so young too.
3 and 4.
The funny thing is though, usually, especially since we're all retired NYPD, you know that you go on a lot of these cases where, for example, it's a foster family.
Right.
The people there are taking in foster kids constantly. There's a certain amount of money that's required to run that particular household. Some of them take better care of their kids than others, using the money for them that they get. But they always want the kids to stay alive because that's money coming in. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So the idea that they're missing now, it would have to be for some type of selling them off to sex trafficking, because other than that, you're missing out on income.
Right. Money. Right. We have people from South Africa in the chat here, and one of the ladies from the UK said, if you lie all the time in the UK, if you lie to the police, you're in custody right away. It's a different thing. Perps lie to us all the time. It's our job to get the truth out of them.
Well, the only law enforcement that has that as a penalty is the FBI. If you lie to the FBI, you can be charged with the crime of lying to a federal officer.
And 99% of their cases are built on that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this! Look at the connection that just happened to Silicon Valley.
You got a better connection,
Michael.
Good, buddy. What's up, Mike?
You're in high def. What did you do? A computer scrub of your computer?
Yes, exactly. I rebooted.
Took all the porn out.
To all our fans, again, this is retired NYPD detective Mike Fabozzi, who is a computer crime expert. Mike, you were cutting out a little bit before. You want to elaborate a little bit more on the computer and the cell phone of where that's going to lead us in this investigation, if anywhere.
Yeah, I think I would focus more on the cell phone data than the computer. I saw that heard that there was a search warrant and the computer was removed, if cell phones were removed, a treasure trove of data and information to understand where they were at what time. And I think earlier I was talking about that the forensics is going to be done by a team or detectives that have expertise in that, lots of training. And so first they'll do an image of the computer, and then they'll do an image of the cell phones. The data that they'll get, especially in the phones, is going to be GPS data. So they'll know their tracking. And so that might lead to locations that will be interest to the investigators. If they brought their children in a car, that information will be transmitted. And there's other data that you may not even be aware of, like in the vehicle itself. Some of the newer cars will have a treasure trove of data also. They'll connect to different cell phones. So if they discarded a cell phone, their previous cell phone may have some information, and then that data is going to be, there's going to be another search warrant drawn on if it's Google or Apple or whatever service they're using, that will come back to the investigators. Any searches, any texts, any emails, and GPS. Also license plate readers and other things like that really help in the investigation.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mike, I got a question for you. I'm sorry, Bill.
It's okay.
Mike, the sheriff there, it's a small town police department, as you heard us speaking about. They don't have a lot of resources. So he did confirm that he called in the FBI. Now, we all know that the FBI doesn't just go around saying, hey, I'll come and help you. You need to reach out to them through channels to get them to do it. In the NYPD, we have that task force with the FBI. So it's a little different story. But in these smaller departments, you need to go through channels. And if you could tell the listeners about some of the resources that the FBI's computer forensics lab have. I mean, it probably is right in line with, or a couple of steps above, the NYPD over at 1PP.
Sure. I could definitely testify to the NYPD computer squad is terrific. Over the past 10 years, the FBI's forensics and computer abilities have really been terrific. In this particular case, it is rural, southwestern California near the desert. There's probably the closest field office would be Los Angeles, I'd imagine. Mm-hmm. And those agents are going to be overwhelmed. I think that in this particular case, probably the local larger police department would be involved, like maybe Bakersfield PD, who, since I got a very late notice on this from Bill. I called the Bakersfield Police Department right before I got on this call to see if they had a current computer forensics team, and they do. So I think that's good information. I think they're probably better off with that agency because the computer forensics for the FBI really focusing right now on probably what happened in Washington and terrorism and stuff like that.
Right. So
Mike, one of the things you mentioned also, because this is a rural area, and there may not be that many cell sites. For example, in the desert, there's not going to be a cell site in the desert. So if they, in fact, did murder these children and dumped them in the desert, there might not be a cell site hit in the exact location.
Yeah, but the GPS on the phone will, and if they had some sort of, let's say, an app on their phone that tracked jogging or things like that, that would actually have the exact detail of the location they've been at. Also, there are ways through the phone services, Google and Apple, where they could identify a particular phone by its identifiers, by its unique identifiers of the location where it's at. Also, if you're using an application like a driving app, like Waze or something like that, that might be helpful also. So the detectives would subpoena that data.
Right, exactly.
There's a couple of interesting points brought up in the chat. And Melissa Wood brings up the point that they stopped getting social worker visits. Now, usually in New York, Robert 123 brings up that the visits usually stopped once they go from foster to adoptive. I don't know what the deal is in California, but if they did kind of sort of say, okay, we don't really need the social workers to come back anymore, that's another little sketchy. I mean, do you really want to put on a show for the people anymore once they're adopted and you've proven you're going to be a good parent? Probably not. But
I would think there would be some checks and balances, some rechecking, over maybe intervals, maybe a once a year check. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it is disconcerting that this was able to happen. And this young couple had 6 children. But somebody brought up another good point. They have all the interviews at that location in California City. Not one neighbor said that they've ever seen those 2 boys.
Right. Exactly.
What is that? Heidi, thanks for the super chat. That's one of my people there, Bill.
So,
Thank you-
so
thank you, Heidi.
I'd like to address the adopted parent. So when the court signs off on the children are adopted, they're just like your biological children legally. So would you want people following up on your parenting? So I don't want to defend the parents, but I'm just saying in a general situation.
I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. You proved that you're going to be a good parent. You were a
You've
good
earned it.
foster parent. They allowed you to adopt it. Enough with the visits already. It's annoying, but it just brings up an interesting point. If they do have a situation where you have a choice to have them keep coming, and you say, "Nah, it's okay." Now, when they go missing, it comes. But the fact that nobody's seen these kids,
Yeah.
ever,
And they've lived there since September.
It goes one step further, boys. There's a YouTube guy that's out there, AK United We Stand. He is going out and going back to their previous location where they lived in September before they moved to this location. And he went to the apartment complex, and I think their apartment was 114. They went over to 114 and they went next to it and they knocked on the door, and the people came out and they talked on camera. And he said, what were these people like? Were the kids out? Were the kids playing out on the front lawn here? Like a big lawn out front, where all the apartments, like a big like condo complex. And they were like, we've never seen those kids out once. We'd see them in the window once in a while. They were not allowed out.
Which is a little strange in itself.
Very
Just
odd.
Suspicious. Yeah.
Just to reiterate what I had spoken about last night on Duty Ron's show, part of this investigation is to find irregularities, find things that you can challenge the parents with, maybe possibly even illegal things, because right now they don't have enough to challenge them with, or else they would bring them in and they'd be subject to not an interview, an interrogation, which is different than an interview. And of course, they would interrogate the mother and the father separately, but they need to have things to challenge them with, or else they could just keep lying to them. So they have to have solid things. That's what Mike Fabozzi was talking about, was the computer and the cell phone stuff. There is concrete, a timeline that you can build from the computer or from the cell phone. You want to touch upon that, Mike?
Yeah, sure. So if we start with the computer, the detectives would see if they would do some keyword searches, if there was searches on the internet for different things, even as innocuous as bleach, right? Like, oh, does this bleach disguise blood stains? Like, oh wow, that'd be a very interesting Google search if I did the forensics on this computer. That I would then, relay to the homicide detective or missing persons detective. But the cell phone, I think, in this particular case, is going to be very important for the investigation and really to challenge those parents.
even if it just comes down to, by the time they were reported missing, if I'm in the middle of playing a video game on my phone, and okay, we just reported a child missing. And then now all of a sudden I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, liking pictures, doing this, and I'm not even paying attention to my child missing. That's going to, that doesn't look good. Like you just reported your child missing, and you play 3 hours of
Absolutely.
whatever.
I always say that circumstantial evidence, which means evidence which inferences can be made from, is very powerful when it's piled up high on top of each other. One piece of circumstantial evidence, okay, but when you have 40 or 50 pieces of circumstantial evidence, then you have something.
Right. Hey, I want to just interject. There's a woman in the chat. She's a content creator, Life Perplexed, and I believe she has a brother who's was an NYPD or in the police department in some capacity. So Life Perplexed says, in your professional experience, though, every crime needs a motive. What are possible motives to kill not one, but two kids, yet leave 4 alive? And I can answer that a little bit. And then I'm sure that somebody, Mike, you could probably expand on it. It brings me right to the Thomas Valva which were coming up on the 1-year anniversary on the 17th of his murder. That's an NYPD ex-transit cop, Michael Valva, killed his son in a garage last January 17th, out in Manorville or out east. I think I got the town wrong. I'm gonna get crushed for that. But he killed his autistic son, who was 7 years old, left him in the garage. He froze to death, and
I remember that.
tortured that kid. But there was 3 other kids in that house that were untouched. So sometimes these parents, as evil as this sounds, just single out kids and don't touch any of the others. There was girls in that house with the Valva incident, and they were under all conditions, in perfect condition. And he singled out the 2 autistic boys and attacked, and treated them brutally. So,
Well, Duty Ron, in this case, it could be like they had 4 kids and then 2 put them over the edge, and they
Yeah.
couldn't handle 6 kids,
Yeah. That's a very small unit, especially if you're not going out to work every day. That family unit that you have and what happens inside those 4 walls, especially if you're not taking your kids out on a regular basis, it becomes a very insulated and just a crazy. It just could get crazier and crazier every day.
right.
And especially if you have financial problems, you don't have a job, maybe your marriage is falling apart.
Right.
That's where child abuse comes in lots of times.
I read another angle, and I don't know how true it is, but I did read it in on one of the news outlets out in California. They said that there's a possibility that the mother, the adoptive mother, was practicing some type of voodoo or satanic
Santeria?
stuff,
Oh, yeah.
Santeria, and I found that to be, I kind of shrugged it off a little bit, but we know from being in the profession that's alive and well in America.
There was a guy in the 2-3 precinct when I was there. His name was Pistol Pete, and he was shooting everyone in the precinct. He shot about 5 or 6 guys.
Like every precinct.
And we grabbed him. The guy, he was 5'2", 120 pounds. But when he walked up the street, the people just started running. It was like the guy Omar from The Wire. And when I caught him, he had a Santeria statue, and my name was inside it. So I think he wished me ill will, but he went to prison. And I'm doing police off the cuff. So who you think's doing better?
Yeah. Don't invite him on as a guest. If he
No, I
gets out.
won't. I don't even know where Pistol Pete is these days.
Mike, what do you think about the motives here? I mean, it would be speculation, but what would you think, and what have you seen in some of the cases that you've provided? I know computer crimes always did support for homicide cases, and I'm sure you've seen a lot.
Yeah, sure. So, are you talking to Mike DeMeo or myself?
You, Michael.
I'm Mark. Sorry,
Mike Fabozi. He's Mark.
Got it.
Okay.
Yes. One I'd like to just add is that I did work in the 3-0 squad. So just a shout out for that.
So you rocked a little bit.
A little bit
What was that,
before
a bee
nerding
house?
out.
Was that a B house, Bill?
The 3-0 when he was there was
an A.
Was an A house.
Yeah,
that was no joke.
That's an A. Yeah.
3-0 it was a very small place, but one of the most violent precincts in the city.
Yeah.
Back when he was there.
That was 95.
Yeah.
You look, this case is intriguing in a lot of ways, right? Like you're going to look right at the parents first, right? They're responsible for the children. I don't like his demeanor in interviews and the way he's holding himself and his hands crossed like this. Like there's no panic. Like if you have children, there's so much panic going on. But Santeria or some religious cult or something like that, it's certainly possible. Is there someone in the neighborhood? But I think that video shows that that no one came and took the kids at that particular time. So the circles are getting smaller and smaller as the forensics and as the different investigation unfolds. So we will see how or why you would kill a child, adopt a child, or your own child, or a foster care child. It's just heartbreaking. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But
You know what,
so as
Mike,
far as motive, I don't know. I really can't add more value there.
Mike is you talked about the cell phone, and let's just go through a natural course of events. If it's safe to say they probably each had a cell phone. I'm looking at the cell phone records, right? Our cell phones have become our lifeline, by the way. Right after the 911 call, I would imagine that the following calls are going to go to every relative, a friend that you have in the neighborhood. Okay. And they're going to be frantic calls. They're probably going to be quick and short. And if there's none of that on their phones, that is that to me, because that's a natural reaction. Your child's missing. The first thing you're going to do when you decide you can't find them on your own, call 911.
Mark,
Right after that, you're going to start calling your friends and
good
family.
point. Very good point. But again, circumstantial evidence.
But
And,
I'm
and
just
when
saying,
it builds up, it's
it
strong
builds up.
evidence, right? But it's not strong enough. It's not a smoking gun, which is what
if
you
they're
need.
playing their games or looking at videos, and there was a 911 call and not one call to a family member asking, "Did you take my kids?" or "Did you see my kids?" or nothing like that. It's circumstantial, but it builds up.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Duty, Ron, I want to ask you one question. There was a report, and I think it's never really been confirmed. And I think it was on the 27th that the kids were seen outside of a Walmart or something, some store.
Yeah, it was an Albertson store. And there's a little bit of controversy swirling around that, Bill. I didn't get a chance to talk to you about that. But Perplex QT, thank you so much for being here. And guys, if you haven't invited, share this video out onto your social media platforms. Let's get the word out. We're talking about, a very sensitive case involving two missing toddlers, 3 or 4 years old. So if you have social media, if you have a big following, I would ask, and I know that Bill and Mark would be appreciative of it, if you guys could just share it out. I see that a couple of you ladies, Dawn Marie, you sent it out to the police and crime chat group, and you sent it out to the Duty Ron YouTube video share group on Facebook. Thank you for doing that. The controversy that's swirling around this, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it today, is that the person who came forward with that information, as you can recall, Bill, it was the private investigator.
Right.
And shit, it slipped my mind because I'm getting old, but I think his last name was like
It's Garcia.
Garcia, right? So Mr. Garcia, who has an impressive track record, he said on the news clipping that we showed last night, he's investigated 300 missing person cases and closed 150 of them. So he's got he's got a 50% close rate, which is pretty impressive. That he found 150 missing persons. And if that in fact is true, which I don't have any reason to believe it's not, he was the one who went and brought that forward to Bakersfield, I think, and then went to California City. Today, it was reported that California City threatened him and told him to get the F out of there and that he's interfering with the case. And he publicly on Facebook made a video or a statement and said, "I'm packing it in. I'm going back to San Diego." So I don't know. None of us know what happened in that transaction or that conversation, but something happened between him and law enforcement authorities where they told him, basically get the F out of here. And I don't like to hear that, because when you have limited resources with boots on the ground and you have people helping, like, we're not used to that. And the NYPD, PIs start showing up and like, hey, you're in my way, guy. Get out of here. Take a walk. We got enough people here. We got helicopters. We got freaking scuba. We got the harbor one. We could get the launch out. It's like, we don't need you here. You're in our way. But out there in the middle of nowhere, bumfuck Idaho, or whatever you want to call it, you kind of like need people to help you. Divers, they don't even have a school, they don't even have like a unit that can go out and dive. So, if somebody shows up with gear ready to go, like an Adventures with Purpose guy
in a bathing suit, let him do it, right?
Yeah, as long as he's not wearing a Speedo, he's
Speedo,
good.
jump in, man. Help us out.
So it's like, I heard that report today, and this guy AV that's out there, United We Stand. That guy is really trying to get things done. He's trying to search massive areas in the middle of the night, searching around.
I can tell you, I've been in probably hundreds of major investigations that involved a lot of hundreds of detectives. You know, in New York City, if you get a major case, they just grab detectives from every precinct in Manhattan and they mobilize them to a location,
Right.
and everyone works the case. And sometimes I can tell you that more is not always better. You know what I mean? In the beginning, more is better, but then you got to sort of shave it down. But I can tell you that we follow up on every single lead,
Right.
no matter how far-fetched it may seem, because that lead that someone calls it in, it has to be closed out, has to
Right.
be investigated and closed out.
Yep.
And I would imagine that this police department is doing the same thing. I can't speak from working with them,
Right.
but that is police procedure. You must follow up every lead and close it out.
Right. Susan King sent a $20 super chat to you guys. She says the neighbor whose property shares the back fence says that she never saw any children in the yard. As a matter of fact, all the neighbors around, and there wasn't, I did the Google Earth view, there maybe was like 5 or 6 homes total in that area. And then if you expanded it out, there was more, but it was like a home, their home, 2 vacant lots. So we're aware of that. And that's also, Bill, you expanded, you spoke about that last night. It's part of the case. So thank you for that super chat. As Mark
Susan
was,
King, thank you
clapping
so
it up
much. We
before.
really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yes.
Hey, do you remember the case where they had the children living? I think they were living in the backyard, almost like in a doghouse. And the neighbors also said they never saw the kids as well. They were malnutrition. I mean, I don't know how many of the kids died, if one of them died, but the other ones. Do you remember the case I'm talking about?
What borough was that in? Was it in Queens?
No, it wasn't in New York. It was somewhere in
Oh.
America, but
Yeah, I don't
they
remember
kept the
that.
kids in the backyard. They had like this makeshift, like kind of tent that they had with sheets and stuff like that. And the kids were malnutrition, and they were the same situation, adopted or foster.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like it's a psychosis, maybe, that some
I
people
mean,
take
mental
on
illness,
kids and
mental illness comes into play here. It's got to. I mean, nobody in their right mind is going to dispose of their child, no matter, what they did. Like
unless you lose your mind.
Right. So mental illness comes and plays in here.
But you would, Duty Ron, you would hope that there would be enough vetting by social services, by Bureau of Child Welfare, that would screen out people that should and shouldn't be allowed to adopt children.
Yeah.
And then, of course, follow it up once they do adopt them.
Well, follow up is good, but like, if you're in a situation where you were perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden you take on these 2 new kids, and from what I read on the people following the chat, it looks like they had special needs as well.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard that
I know
today.
you fostered them, but now time continues, and the amount of work, it becomes burdensome, exhaustion, fatigue, mental.
Yeah, see, and I saw 2 more people in the chat say, and the Glare is here. That's Will, one of the friends of the Duty Run channel. He says, is it true that the PD in that area is privately owned? So I heard that from a couple of sources. I mean, I guess anything's possible. I know that Corrections does privately run correction facilities throughout the country, right? Guys, Mike? I mean, I've heard of it. Yeah. So,
So in California, there's places, there's, cities and towns, and there's areas that are called unincorporated. So if there's an unincorporated town, the sheriff of the county, it would be the law enforcement for that unincorporated town. Now, specifically, I don't know this city or town. It's very far from where I live, but I know that's the policy here in California.
So the sheriff is elected. It's an elected official.
Usually an elected official, and then they are the sheriff, the lead law enforcement for the county.
So he may or may not have a lot of law enforcement experience.
He may or may not. True.
He's brand new. I know he's new. The guy that was in there before him, and I don't know if they're sheriffs or I think his badge said police chief. So
I tell you, Duty Run, you throw 4 stars on someone's epaulette and you can't tell.
I used to have a rack that went over my shoulder. I was one of those guys,
When you have that rack on the NYPD, that's when guys, they're scared. They're like,
isn't that one of your Patreon levels? Polish your rack.
Polish my rack. That's right.
Guys, if you're not supporting police off the cuff, these are 2 retired NYPD. One guy's a retired sergeant from Manhattan North Homicide. The other guy is a retired NYPD police officer, and he did
Detective.
Detective.
20
Mark
oh
was a
yeah, detective. Sorry, Jesus, geez Louise. Support both these guys. Check out their YouTube channel. Go look at their Patreon and support them. They interview. I'm honored to be here with these guys because they've had Chief Adamone. They've got some really big guys on here. So it's an honor for me to be here. Truly.
I just interviewed Jack Cambria yesterday, the chief hostage negotiator, probably the most knowledgeable hostage negotiator in the world.
Yes.
He actually teaches it all over the world now. I was very honored to interview him,
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Thank you,
But-
Quinny, for subscribing, and thank you to everyone who does subscribe here to these guys. They got a phenomenal channel, and they're really doing great stuff, and they're giving you a lot of good information. But yeah, this case is just so bizarre because the law enforcement element, Bakersfield seems like a bigger police department. Like Mike said, he looked at and called down over there, and they seem to have a little bit bigger of resources in a department, and they're helping out because the searches are going on in those two areas. I think it's Kern County. I don't know if I'm right on that. Kern.
No, you're correct.
Right.
This is Mike again. So Kern County, and I wanted to go back to the sheriff's office and Department of Services. So the area is very rural. So the investigators may not have driven out to the house over time, or maybe one visit and then phone calls. It's pretty rural there. You're by the Mojave Desert.
One of the things I wanted to say is, and it's, there's a possibility cases like these don't get solved or get solved years and years later. We had the famous case in New York City of a boy named Eton Pates, who was kidnapped off the streets of the East Village, probably like 40 years ago. And they had just recently, they were satisfied that they solved it on a guy who was already in prison, who had made admissions to some of his cellmates. And then we had Baby Hope up in the 3-4. It was a little baby that was put in a cooler, and they found her body in the cooler. And for years and years and years, that case went unsolved. In fact, the 3-4 detectives took a collection and they bought her a headstone and they paid for her burial.
I remember
Just
that on the news.
2 years ago, through genealogical DNA, they solved that case, and her uncle killed her. So these cases can be very, very, very difficult to solve. And look, at this point, I mean, look, we always want to be hopeful. Maybe we could find these kids alive, but it's been over 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
And statistically and every other way, it says that bad things happen to these two boys.
I mean, obviously, this might sound like a academic question, but the biological mother, where is obviously she's been interviewed, and those people. How about those people?
Yeah, the biological mom came to the press conference that they gave. The still photo that Bill put up there, that news conference, the biological mom came, and
12-step woman just gave us $9.99. Thank you so much, 12-step woman. You're the best.
Thank you.
We appreciate all of these super chat. We're not even used to this, but these are all Duty Ron's people. You've been so generous to us and helping us build up our YouTube presence, and I appreciate all of the Duty Ron fans jumping on the police off the cuff bandwagon. Thank you so much.
So the biological mom did speak out. She said she was suspicious of things going on, but she said in an interview that she had no contact with this family until her kids went missing, and she saw it on the news. Then she flipped out and came over because the news just doxed the adoptive parents. They put the address all over the place. So she came down with her aunt, and you saw the aunt on the front lawn giving them the business. Like, this is not how caring parents are supposed to act when their two children are gone. You're too nonchalant. His exact words. He was like, you're too calm. You're too nonchalant about this. You're showing no emotion. And it was a very tense standoff there. I don't think the biological mom was there, but she got interviewed afterwards. She was like like close by, but I don't think legally she could have been there. So that's why the aunt was there and a bunch of other her family members, and they were all pissed at the two of them, and they were getting defensive. But You know, the biological mom said, my motherly intuition said there was something wrong for a long time, but I had no legal recourse. My rights and my custody I was
And
done.
the biological mom, she lost the children because of her drug problems.
She claimed to have a marijuana or some type of drug problem, but the 4-year-old,
Marijuana?
that's what she said. I mean,
I think it's a little bit more severe than
Yes.
that because
I think
social
I'm basing it on what she
services.
said, guys.
Yeah.
But she also, when the child was just 3 or 6 months old, had a broken leg, and it was under
Okay.
suspicious
All right,
conditions.
because you know, if you're in dire straits and you're hooked on drugs, whatever, and you know a way to get some money,
Right. Yeah.
you can go get these 2 kids if you want. I know
Right.
where they live.
All right.
You know what I'm saying?
Some,
I'm just throwing out
yeah, no, right.
possibilities. If we were 4 guys right now sitting in the squad room trying to find the motive, you're just shooting, you're spitballing right now. Did we
Right.
look at the biological mother? Did we look at her phone? Did we look at who she's contacting?
Irma
You know?
said, what about the biological father?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
now it's fathers. There's 2 separate dads for each one of these boys.
Oh,
But apparently one of them's incarcerated or was incarcerated. The other one is just in the breeze. He's, one of these, absentee landlords. Just, did his thing and ran. But Perplex QT says about the scents. The dog caught scents inside the house, and this is a big one with the fans, the listeners, the people who aren't law enforcement like us. So they got these questions like, how come the dog hit inside the house but didn't hit outside the house? Well, if they brought bedding over from the previous location where the kids were seen, they were confirmed at the apartment in Bakersfield. So maybe they brought their bedding or maybe a mattress over. The dog's going to smell that. And that explains the hit on inside that home. Could be clothing, could be any type of item, right, guys? I'm not just.
Well, usually if there is a hit, they'll also take the dog outside after he has that scent and
They said
see
there was nothing.
where the dog goes after that. If he follows the scent, to another location.
He stayed in the doorways, according to reports on the ground there. So.
There's
So
been
as Bill would say, that's another circumstantial piece of evidence, right? So the dog is trained, right? They have no vested interest. They just do what the scent. And if the dog didn't go outside the house, how were those children? The neighbors reported never seeing them outside.
Right.
So the question to ask is, if the dog only has the hit inside the house, did they leave the house alive or dead? Right?
or what Duty Ron is saying, maybe they never made it to the house. Maybe they just brought the bedding over there. That's why the dog is smelling the bedding. But
Mark, did you have grade? Did you get grade, Mark?
no, I couldn't. I was up for it, but
I didn't either. But I think you were worthy of that, bro. Give us the grade, man.
I was working for Pulaski, and he still didn't give me the grade.
For our fans out there, New York City detectives, there's 3 ranks of detective: 3rd grade investigator, 2nd grade, and 1st grade makes lieutenant's pay. 2nd grade makes sergeant's pay. So actually, if you're a 1st grade detective, you really can make more money than a chief because you make overtime. Some of them make 500-600 hours a year overtime, whereas a chief gets a straight salary, but he gets other spiffs, right?
Bill,
I got pinned though. I remember when I came home with the pin. I got pinned after the homicide course I coordinated, and I showed my ex-wife. I was like, "Look, I got pinned." She goes, "How much more money do you make?" I was like, "No, that's it. That's it. This is it."
You just get the pin.
I got out with lieutenant's pay as a 3rd grader, though. I did a ton of overtime in warrants. I was in the trip team, so I was going outside the state picking people up. So
I worked in warrants too. Where'd you work?
You know Johnny Comer, right? You worked with him.
Yeah. Of course, I worked with him
in the task force.
Task force first.
Yeah, I talked to him about you.
And then I worked in. He went to Queens warrants. I went to Manhattan warrants.
Yeah, he was my partner in Queens warrants. Anyways, quickly, Perplex QT says the previous owners of the home that they're currently living in says there's a secret room in the attic. FBI was inside that house twice. They did 2 search warrants. They brought out 46 items, bags. 46 bagged items, brown bagged. So that could have been clothing, could have been, who knows? We don't know, but definitely they confirmed it was electronic evidence, the 2 cell phones, a laptop, and I think an iPad or electronics devices. If there was any type of private rooms, I mean, secret rooms or anything like that, they would either go back with another search warrant, or while they're there, I mean, I've conducted hundreds of search warrants, hundreds, like in the 500s, that many. And when we'd have the A team go in there, the place was ripped apart. As a matter of fact, one time and one time only, we did a search warrant. I was in the 113. I was with John Garrity. He was the CO of warrants at the time. We were in the basement. I mean, A team cleared it. We were in there just doing inventory. We had a bunch of guns, drugs, and a lot of stuff. And all of a sudden, we hear movement behind one of the walls in the basement, and it was a perp hiding in the wall.
Wow.
And yeah, he didn't have any weapons on him or anything, but we were in that basement area because we thought we got the all clear, and we were just joking around and carrying on and doing our stuff, taking our evidence, collecting it. And all of a sudden, Coleman was there. Johnny Coleman was there. He was like, "What the is that?"
I had a guy. I had a guy.
I was like, "John, it's not time to eat yet." He was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Let's go look." And he all of a sudden he pulls his gun. He's like, "Get the F out of there! Come on out!" And it was a guy. It was really embarrassing. But yes, police.
Well, Sleeping Beauty just gave us a $7.99 super chat. Thank you so much. I'm sure you're another Duty Ron fan, but
yes,
glad
Sleeping
to have
Beauty,
you aboard. And please subscribe to Police Off the Cuff.
She's from Australia. She says, "Duty Ron, please look into Melbourne, Australia. Mother and her 3 babies, 2, 3, 5 years old, found dead yesterday."
Oh,
I will definitely, Sleeping Beauty, send me a message on the website, dutyron.com, or just private message me on any of the social media, and I'll look into that, and we will possibly cover that case. That sounds horrific.
You know, Duty Ron, let me ask you about that, about building your cases by people asking you how you do your investigations from home. But before I do that, I just want to say, before I ask you that, I just want to say I found a guy one time hiding in one, you know, those beds that used to go inside. Was it, you pull them out?
A
Murphy bed?
Yeah.
I found him rolled up in there, and he was calling out for help. It was like we were in the room. We're like, "You hear that? You hear that?" His brother had stuffed him in the bed and threw him in there with the pillows. But he was losing his, like, he got scared. He was getting claustrophobic, so he was asking for help. He couldn't get out.
Unbelievable.
So he pulled out the bed, and there he goes.
You know,
But go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, Duty Ron, one of the things I just want everyone that's listening to know is that investigation doesn't happen quick. Nothing, investigation and the word quick do not exist in the same universe.
Yeah.
All of the evidence that they took takes time to analyze. It has to go to labs. Some of it, if it's forensic evidence, you know, they have to test it. They have to do tests. Some of these tests take 2, 3, or 4 weeks to come back. So if you want accurate and good investigation, you just have to be patient and wait, and you have to have confidence in the police that are investigating. And in this case, also the FBI. And I'm sure everything that can be done is being done to find these 2 little
Tracy
boys.
Harvey gave us 25 on the super chat. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you,
Tracy
Tracy.
MBS. That looks like I guess that would be Vice Squad, Manhattan Vice Squad. I think
She's from Illinois. She's one of my
Oh.
Patreon supporters and a Duty Run channel member. So
and Duty Ron, I just wanted to kind of jump on that last comment about time.
Mhm.
You know, the computer forensics is going to take time. The phone forensics is going to take time. The biological evidence is going to take time. And because of the ruralness of this area, you know, there's a lot of driving. Unfortunately, this is not on television, you know, where it's in an hour we have the case closed. You know, this stuff has to be tagged, bagged, logged, and then processed. So even, you know, this is a horrific case, and it's a challenge for law enforcement. But I think that it's great that you guys are doing this and getting the word out.
absolutely.
You mentioned earlier about it, somebody who had information, and it seemed for the local PD, and I guess maybe they were either overwhelmed or whatever, but they told them to get lost. Nowadays, especially with YouTube, and we have a lot of people doing their own investigations that really, they might be good at it. God bless them. A lot of them are women, and we know as well, because we're four men here, we know how good at they are at doing their investigations. But you have a lot of people working on these cases right now. And I don't even know how you're picking off the information. I guess you got to kind of sort of, because you're not there, but you can do a lot of stuff online, I guess. Is that how do you go about investigating these things?
Well, that's a good question, Mark, because what happens is we're living in a day and age of transparency with police departments. It's different than when you and I and when Grandpa Bill was on the job. So at the end of it all,
you can't say that when I have a mouthful of water. It almost wound up on the screen.
Listen, but it's true. That was just a little dig. But I'm saying the times from the 80s and 90s and now it's a completely different ball game. So we have DCPI in the NYPD, right? In the 90s, when I first started, it was called something else. Remember, it was Jack Maple running around, and he was the guy who came out to all the homicides, and you used to see him with his bow tie. But their police departments are getting out stuff to the media that we normally not get out. And what's happening is these web sleuths and these people who cover these crime cases, me included, I go and I cipher through it. And the difference between somebody like me and then somebody that has no law enforcement is that I know to decipher the bullshit from what's really happening, because we know from doing the job. All of us have been in different capacities. You worked in the RIP, Mark. You worked in computer crimes. You worked in, the homicide squad, Bill. I did warrants. We all know what is the hogwash and what's the real deal. So people like myself and like you, Bill, and some of the, ex-law enforcement profiling, Evil has a big channel. Also, Chris McDonough is another guy from San Diego. He's a retired homicide detective, 30 years he served. We know when the media is putting out bullshit and what's
isn't it funny how you could put together a story, like all of us, we read stories with civilians that and then you might be reading the story at the same time, and like they come up with them, nah, that couldn't happen. You know why? Because of this, that, and the other. Well, you could read an article and know, like, you just put things together the same way we're good at putting together a story. What's the truth? What's the lie? Our brains are trained right now. When somebody talks to us, we take what they're saying and we start like almost like a cotton gin. Truth, lie, truth, lie, truth, lie. And then you put together the truth. That's it. Our brains are trained for that.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's what we read. When we're reading the articles, we know the bullshit because we've been at the crime scene.
Cheated no more. Just gave us a super chat. Thank you so much. We appreciate all you guys. All you Duty Run fans are helping out police off the cuff. We really appreciate it.
And Mark, I just wanted to add that, you would read an article on the case that you worked, and there's very little truth to it. And you're like, wait, this is my case. None of this, much of this stuff.
Mike, that's so true, because the press, if they don't know something, they just make it up.
Or they just go by, they can only go by who's talking to them. And if, when you're new to the squad, or you're at a crime scene, or you're just standing there in uniform and the press comes up to you, you get shaky. Your knees are like, oh, I don't know nothing. I can't say nothing. You run, you disappear, you hide.
You don't want to jeopardize the case too,
Right. But even just the cop that may know something is in uniform. He's not going to, they just get nervous. They don't know what to say to the press. So then if nobody's talking to them, they only have what they pick up from around. Like, what did you hear? What did you hear?
Right.
What do you hear? And then they start putting together a story, and they'll figure it out later on down the line when the police finally
except the New York City Police Department is way too transparent.
Right.
I know, because when I would work a major case, I had to write what was called the preliminary investigative worksheet, and that thing became an animal of its own. Sometimes it would wound up on a police shooting. It would be like 18 pages long. So right after that happened, I would have to go into the station house and write this report. And sometimes I was like rushing to finish it by 0600, and I would start it at 8 o'clock at night.
Wow.
That's how voluminous this report was. And this report was used to brief the police commissioner and the chief of detectives, but then they would give this to the press. They would use this to brief the press, which I would see things that I wrote in my report exactly as I wrote it in the
Yeah,
newspaper.
it's
the next day.
cringeworthy. It's cringeworthy.
It is cringeworthy.
Cheated
Hey,
no more.
Butterfly Lady says there's a company that you can pay a fee and look up the person's name, and you'll get all their credit information. There's a bunch of companies like that, Butterfly Lady, and the police department. It's funny when you worked with the NYPD, because at least when I was on, and you guys obviously you remember this too, everybody had a code for something. You know what I'm saying? So I used to, in my book, I'd have your code for this, Bill's code for that, Mike's code for this.
Right.
And then later on, they came up with the
real-time crime center.
Yeah. But in the meantime, you were using all these different codes. And then if you needed Nextel, Nexus, Lexus, whatever, you'd call up your boy down somewhere else that, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you run this?
The auto crime boys. We had our auto crime.
Yeah, you had people all over the place.
But you know what Mark's describing? Mark is describing that none of the computer programs were streamlined and interconnected with each other.
No way. You had cars, you had beds, you
needed a code for each. Like I remember the precinct CO used to always say, "Is he a gang member?" I don't know. The gang database was down. He thought we could just press a button and it spit out all the CompStat questions,
So I wanted to read out the super chat because Cheated No More wrote out a whole big thing. It's just a question. It says, can't understand why the parents of these kids are not smart enough to act like they really care. That is bizarre. That is a bizarre disconnect in the first place. I agree. We all agree on that. They showed no remorse. They showed no urgency. They showed no emotion. And that's the true sign of somebody who is not telling you the truth, when they have a complete and total disconnect. And that's what we saw here. And that's why I feel like the press, they suck sometimes, but in some other instances, they're really good because they give us this preview, right, of a line of bullshit that we sometimes can't get. Because when we ask someone to come in for questioning, they lawyer up. And then you're like, or whatever, or they just don't want to cooperate. So
yeah, that's a good point, Julie Ron.
Yeah, this is a great aspect of the press, even though the news sometimes, as we call it, will get the story out and sensationalize it, right? You'll give them something and they'll be like adding extra crap onto it. And I remember seeing Rosanna Scotto, now she's like a bigwig in, over at Fox here in New York. But she used to be a field reporter earlier in her days, and we had a shooting in Brownsville. I think I was a rookie. It was like 191 and 92. And she's out on the scene. And I knew a bit of the inner workings because in housing, when I was a housing cop, in housing, our detectives were writing our PSA. So we would get the 411 from them, exactly what was happening. And so I had the whole details of the shooting. And then I go home. I was working at Daytona. I went home and I see the news. I see her reporting, and it's a completely different story. It was not even anything close to what happened. They just fabricated this nonsense. And that was back in 1991, 30 years ago. So they've gotten a lot worse.
They've gotten better.
It's because when you can't talk to somebody and they come out and do an interview like that, you could see their body language. You could see all the things we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a valuable tool. It's hard to lie under those, when you're doing something like that. You know what I'm saying? But I also think it's like I think it really is a psychosis. There's a lot of the parents, if you just do one of these, what they do, the FBI, the profilers, these parents that either they get something happens with kids, and they just, when you see them, they're disconnected. After the child's gone, we could see a history of it. Parents giving interviews, and they did it, but they're already done with it.
Well, Duty Ron, Irma brought up yesterday that she thinks that all the other kids should be interviewed, and absolutely 100%. We don't know their ages though. But
well, I watched them get walked out. There's a video that's available publicly on, of course, one of the news outlets. It showed the social workers or CPS or whatever they call them in California. Is a different name, different acronym for all these folks, but they walked the kids out, and they will all look like they were 5, 6 and under, young, little.
Right.
So they had a whole group of 6 kids that are little.
It's a burden, man. It's a burden.
Raising my 2 kids, it was like that was enough. Like I couldn't imagine having 6 in one
You know,
house.
I don't know if at what age a child is swearable in a court of law. I'm sure it's older than 5 or 6. But
Yeah.
we had a homicide one time where a 4-year-old witnessed the whole murder of his grandmother and her boyfriend,
Oh,
and basically was worthless as a witness. You know, just couldn't articulate what happened. Of course, was probably traumatized, but you know, would bury that horrendous incident deep in her subconscious.
yeah.
And that was the one I talked about the other day of Carmen Quinones and Ruben Frederick,
Yeah.
December
Terrible
1st,
case.
2001. And the 4-year-old granddaughter was duct taped by the perps, and one of the perps wanted to slit her throat,
Jesus.
and the other one talked him out of it.
Terrible.
So they allowed her to live. But she was, as far as a witness, she was no use as a witness.
Before we went live tonight, I looked very quick because I was running so tight in time. But before we went live, I did a quick refresh of this case, and there was messages in a Facebook chat room that the mom and dad, the adoptive mom and dad, lawyered up. So I don't know if that's true, but that's common. Once they feel a little bit of a tightness around the neck or a little bit being backed against the wall, and also too, somebody said that the father's family members, I don't know if it's his uncle or whatever, is one of the vice presidents of the NAACP. So,
well, that's the danger from a police department of when to pull the trigger on the interrogation, because if you leave them out there too long, they're going to lawyer up. There's no doubt. And even if they're not smart enough to lawyer up, some lawyer is going to say, something, you need a lawyer. Here's my card,
right.
Because there's a lot of ambulance chasers out there that will do that. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to advise them, you need a lawyer. And once they do that, as you know, the police can't speak to them any longer.
Hey, Robert, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Mark. I was just going to say that.
Robert, 1, 2, 3 brings up a good point. Would the Florida police be keeping a tab on these people in Florida?
I mean, we've reached out to outside agencies many a times and asked for assistance in just surveilling. So that's a possibility, right, Bill? I mean, if you don't have enough for an arrest, and you want to just keep an eye on somebody, we do.
No, absolutely.
I mean, look at what's going to go on for the inauguration. This is taking us off of this, but I want to bring this up. NYPD is sending, I think, 6 intel detectives, and they're deputizing them under federal law for the day, and they're going down to the inauguration. So NYPD is lending 6 of our police detectives and having them go down there to assist.
And I had heard that they were sending 200
at the
cops.
Capitol rally 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I had heard they were sending 200 uniformed cops too.
Oh, really?
There you go.
PD.
Yeah, I just heard about the detectives. So yeah, maybe they are sending some of the ESU cops or whatever. I don't know, but they're sending a contingent down there. And
I think it's crazy. They're suspending cops for being there. They have no proof that they were even in the Capitol.
Yeah.
Also firemen.
I mean, I was just trying to tie this into cooperation amongst outside. Like, so if the California authorities called down to Florida and said, hey, we got these 2 potentials, they could be this could boil it. Could you just keep an eye on them, depending on what their resources are? I mean, they might not assign somebody to ghost them, but maybe just check up on them once a day or just see if they're there. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, they would absolutely do that, and police departments
This is a big
cooperate.
case.
They cooperate with each other.
This is 2 little kids involved, so I'm sure that there's been a phone. Hopefully, I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's been a phone call, but
yeah, it looks like there's almost still 100 people here. 93, at least my chat says.
yeah, we did good tonight. Duty run, man. I can't tell you how much. You're a gentleman.
Hey, man, you guys are fellow brothers in blue. I'm always ask Coleman next time you get off. Like when you get off of me, if you have time, call Johnny or text him and ask him about me. I'm always about helping a fellow, cop, and especially NYPD. I'm always trying to do what I can. And I reached out to Bill. I mean, I watched your guys' show, and I was in the chat one day trying to communicate with you guys. I was like, do you guys even look at the effing chat? What's going on here?
We weren't at the time, you know.
No, we didn't know. We got better.
I'm trying to make friends with these guys. They're
We were
fucking
like
ignoring me.
country bumpkins on YouTube, you know.
Yeah. This was you helped us out a lot, man. I can't say how much you helped us.
But you know, Duty Ron, I also want to thank Mike Fabozzi,
Oh yeah.
who one of the best forensic guys in the country. And with no notice at all, I called him this afternoon, and he said, "Yeah, sure, I'll
This
come
guy,
on."
hey, Duty, if you don't know, you know, Mike, he's in Silicon Valley. He's taking the time out. He's usually tanning at this time of the day.
Yeah.
He's a gentleman.
But
He's a gentleman.
He's
Not only does he tan,
or if he's not tanning, he's counting his stacks of millions that he's made over there.
No, Mark. Now he's counting his Bitcoin.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, well, I do have some Bitcoin, so yeah, pretty good stuff.
Mike, I'd love to have you come on if these guys wouldn't mind sharing you with me to maybe come on some of the tougher cases that I cover. I'd love to have you, providing you have a good connection. If you don't, then I got no use for you.
Yeah,
this connection now sounds great. What the hell
perfect.
happened?
Better rock and roll.
What did you do to get better? Because it was awful in the beginning.
Yeah.
He probably has
like every other computer, going back to Windows, DOS, Windows 95.
I remember
Reboot.
that.
You have to reboot.
That was a reboot, and that's all it took. Sometimes you got to clear out the cache.
You know,
not the
Duty Ron,
Bitcoin,
he
the
was my
cache.
professor in John Jay when I was in the master's program, and he was teaching a forensic computer course. And one night he invited us to this party at this bar on 21st Street. I forget the name of that place. It's not open anymore. And he brings like 6 of his students. And you should saw the face of the people that ran this party. They were not happy. But we ate and drank OTA for the whole night, right?
Nice. On the arm. I like
That's
it.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we should be closing down now. To all the people that tuned in tonight, thank you so much. Duty Ron went out of his way. He's a true gentleman. If you donated money with the super chat, we appreciate it, man. We're trying to build up over here. We're trying to get our following. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Bill, we have a Patreon.
Yeah, we also have a Patreon, www.patreon.com/policeoffthecuff. And we have 3 tiers. For $7 a month, you're the bucket. That's what we call you. For $9 a month, you get to polish my rack. I have my rack of medals, and you can polish it. That's $9 a month. And for $11, you can dip them in butter. We won't tell you what you're going to dip in butter, but you can dip them in butter. Yeah, I wish I had my coffee mug to show you.
And to our fans who are new to Duty Ron, please check out his podcast on YouTube, and he's got amazing cases that he covers there. Tell us about the podcast, Duty.
Well, it's a true crime YouTube channel. I started it just about a year ago. On the end of this month will be 2 years actually. So I started 2 years ago. Joey Brooklyn, who's in the chat, he was somebody who recommended I try YouTube, and I did it. I tried it, and the response was good. Everybody loves to hear from retired guys that have experience instead of getting a bunch of hogwash shoved down their throat from people that really don't know what's going on. So, hey, Pete Pranzo is in the chat. Good to see you, Pete.
Yeah,
Pete's the
can't wait
man.
to have
Pete,
you
what
on soon.
What a guy, man.
Yeah, I'm going to connect with Pete and have him on. He's got so many stories, boy. What a career he had. But yeah, so that's what it is. It's like just talking about breaking news and cases, and I break down a lot of the higher profile cases and just give a law enforcement perspective. And that's what a lot of our viewers, you got to remember, Mark, they're not and Mike and Bill, the people who are watching us aren't the guys from the job. I mean, you will get scragglers, guys from the job that will watch, but the bulk of the audience here, the 90 or 100 people that were in and watching, have no law enforcement background. They might have family in there. So when they can get an inside scoop about how it goes, and of course, we don't give up our trade secrets, but that's what it's about. So thank you for promoting that for me, and thank you for having me. I'm honored.
And Duty Ron, thank you for that super chat you just hit us up with, man. That's we really appreciate that. You know.
And Mike Fabozi. Well, where can we find you, Mike Fabozzi?
You know, Mark, but you know something, though, Mark. Mike Fabozzi's probably got more money than God living out there in Silicon Valley.
Oh, man.
He probably doesn't even use his.
I would literally burn my money
He probably doesn't even use his pension. He probably
he didn't give
probably
super
just
chat.
banks that.
He didn't give super chat because it doesn't. We don't accept Bitcoin.
That's why
here.
we don't accept Bitcoin. But
you-
Mike Fabozzi probably gives his pension to the
He's like-
homeless.
He's like Trump. He gives away his pension.
And something moving to the West Coast, he became a liberal too.
Everybody's like,
I'm gonna send some Ethereum to you or Ripple. I mean, DX chain stuff.
Wow.
take it all, man.
Heidi, good to see you. Thank you for joining. She said, I can't believe it's been 2 years with Duty Ron. All right, listen, my wife's giving me the evil eye right now, so I got to get going.
We did it, man. We did it.
You
It was a
guys,
great
thank you so
episode.
much. And thank you, Bill Ryan from Ryan Investigations, and all of Duty Ron's fans that have subscribed to us and watched this evening. We thank you so much. We appreciate if you follow. And Mike Fabozi, you were a good professor at John Jay, and I'm going to visit you in California.
Me too.
You're all welcome. You can stay at my house. I have plenty of room. And
Mike.
we'll enjoy. I'll take you down the street to Mark Zuckerberg's house. and
I don't want to see
Facebook.
Mark Zuckerberg.
I'm sure you have a bungalow we could stay in.
It's a pleasure. It's a
Got it.
pleasure to meet you, Mike.
All
Seriously, it's a pleasure. I'd love to have you on the channel. Thank you, man.
All right,
Thank you
ciao.
guys so much. Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
good night, everyone. Thank you so much.